My name is Scott Halfman. I'm here to occupy Building 7. I was part of the march that we did 3 laps between Zuccotti Park and Building 7. We're basically calling for an occupation and an investigation of 9/11 and the collapse of Building 7. And we're trying to bring the 9/11 truth message to the entire occupation of Zuccotti Park because, you know, it's a very fundamental issue, and we're talking about the same group of people. That's why I made up this sign over here. It says 9/11 was a 1% job. We're trying to convey this message that the same people who were responsible for the collapse of the financial structure of the United States and the banking and all this, the bailout and all this stuff, are the same people who organized 9/11. It's pretty clear.
What's Building 7?
What's Building 7?
A question on so many Americans' minds today.
Yeah, well, we get that question a lot down here, and it always makes me laugh because, you know, Building 7 was televised on 9/11, and it's never been televised since. You know, the mainstream media is not allowed to show Building 7 because it's quite clearly a controlled demolition. It's the smoking gun of 9/11. It's the one thing that, you know, they dread seeing and hearing about is Building 7 because it clearly shows the truth about 9/11.
Well, even more than that, there have been conflicting stories about it where people have said, we made the decision to pull it versus the official commission report story, which was fires somehow from blocks away from the Twin Towers coming down. Yeah. But why do you think the American people have become so tuned out about this or seem to have forgotten it? Because you're right, it was televised. It was part of the story on 9/11 and then very conveniently, very quickly forgotten about.
Well, I mean, I think cognitive dissonance is probably the best explanation for what the average American engages in when you tell them the truth about 9/11. You know, they just can't connect with something that dark. And you realize, well, first of all, the people who are supposedly, you know, like protecting me are probably involved in, you know, the greatest mass murder of the 21st century. And now they're saying that they're protecting us, and really it's them who actually brought it about. So I'm not safe. It brings a great feeling of insecurity, and people don't want to feel insecure, you know, in their own country. They don't want to. Because that means they have a tremendous amount of work to do to overcome this problem. We have to basically, you know, indict our leaders. You know, we have to cut through all the veils and all the shells of resistance that they've created until we get to the very heart and core of who planned and executed 9/11. And that's the truth that we're bringing to people. You know?
Do you have that truth yourself?
I believe that I know a lot more than the average citizen about 9/11. I mean, I know about L. Paul Bremer's involvement in 9/11. L. Paul Bremer was, you know, a top executive who worked in the impact zone in the North Tower. He actually owned a patent on nanothermite. He actually, you know, worked in the Department of Defense developing nanothermite. He went on to become the occupation governor of Iraq.
He was my boss for a while when I was there, yeah.
No, I'm suspicious of you.
I'm a shill for L. Paul Bremer here, obviously. Why is it still important?
Well, because, I mean, the people who organized 9/11 are essentially the same people who organized the financial collapse. I mean, that's the reason. I mean, they're still in power, and we're still their subjects.
Well, let me put you on the spot here and ask you a tough question, because, you know, we know a lot more about the financial industry and the collapse here in the United States than we do about 9/11. At least the general public does, what's on the public record. Are you really confident saying you know who is behind 9/11? Because personally, I would just say that I think it's most important to recognize that, first of all, the government story is not possible. Yeah. You know, and that enough, sure. You know, you can come to some conclusions from that, but I personally think it's a little bit dangerous just to come out and say, I know the truth, I know what happened, you know, as opposed to simply saying, look, Building 7, what the fuck? Can you explain this? If not, you better start asking some serious fucking questions of your government.
Yeah, I mean, there's 9/11 like 101, like anthropology 101, where we need to constantly address the mass of people who refuse to look at it, and we need to point out the obvious truths to sort of like break them out of their spell. And then there's a conversation between people who actually, know all of that stuff. And I feel like I'm in that kind of conversation right now. So, I mean, look, the financial collapse was orchestrated. That much is clear. 9/11 was orchestrated. That much is clear. So let's put the dots together here. Let's connect the dots and start investigating both of those things. I think you'll find that a lot of people who are deeply involved in Wall Street. I mean, if you go way back to like Prescott Bush and all the skullduggery that's been going on in Wall Street, the CIA links to Wall Street historically, there's no way to separate these things. They're intimately linked together. All the insider trading that went on 9/11, that's not Wall Street.
Okay, so I just got to ask one last question then. When you became aware of this, when you did your homework, when you really realized what you've realized about 9/11, about the implications with that, with the financial collapse and what that says about our government, how did you live your life differently, and what do you expect people to do when they get the awareness that you're sharing?
Okay, how did I? Well, I mean, see, on 9/11, my father was in the World Trade Center, and he ended up surviving, thank the Lord. He got out. He was one of those guys running out of the dust with his briefcase. And I was in Brazil watching it live on television, trying to call the United States. So my life immediately changed, because what I saw was a black op. I saw them showing us films of Arabs dancing with their guns in the air. I saw Jane Stanley announce the collapse of Building 7 before it happened, and I'm like, what is going on here? Buildings don't collapse like that. My father was, he knew all about the engineering of those buildings, and he told me about it. And so I knew that, those buildings can't collapse. My life was different from that moment on.
How did you live differently, and how do you expect others to follow what example you would set then?
Well, I think that telling the truth about 9/11 is probably the most important thing that we can do as a political movement today. I think that this occupation...
Okay, but that's just a start. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but to really get to the point of this.
Yeah.
How should people live their lives differently as a result of having this awareness?
They should stop taking orders. They should be questioning orders that are unjust and immoral. I mean, that's on many levels. Many people in corporate America, the police, the army, the military, they're all following orders, and they think that that's okay. But when you were a Nazi, following Hitler's orders, we all agree that that was not okay. Well, it's the Nuremberg precedent. It's the same thing today. 9/11 was the burning of the Reichstag for America. It's an immoral act, deeply immoral act that justified a series of deeply immoral wars. And now we're all just following orders and thinking that that's okay. We need to stop following orders and start questioning. People need to put down their arms and stop fighting these wars and we need to have justice. We need to get to the bottom of what's really going on. My YouTube is Man Gets Arrested at Ground Zero for Demanding Truth. I got arrested. I've got a case against the NYPD. December 1st, I'm taking him down.